in that person? Do you recognize that person?
Yeah. I mean,
and do you feel kinship is obviously not the right word, but what is the connection between that person and the person you are now? And how do you balance that?
I mean, and I said that in my statement. I said, I would have said anything, to get attention in a place which is so embarrassing, like so embarrassing as a 19-year-old adult living on my own, it is embarrassing. And it's so shameful to have that come back now because, I'm not a perfect person, but I do recognize, especially as someone with a platform, with people who see what I do and say and see the moves that I make. And I try to be cognizant of the fact that it's like, you may not be perfect, but even if you've done things in your private life, do things publicly that atone, where you help, where you try to pay back your ounce of flesh. And it's like for every bit of pain that you've caused, you have to turn around and try to atone for it. To anyone that you've hurt, whether directly or indirectly, it's like I never really know specifically in like what ways accountability, is what is correct and what is like, I'm not the one to decide what that looks like, but there's so much I could say about it. It really is just, it's what you said. It's embarrassing. Like when I look at that person, I see someone who did not care about their life and did not care about what they said and said, well, if nobody cares about me and if I hurt, then I'm going to say whatever and I'm going to do whatever because, and not to flip it on myself and be self-deprecating, but it came from a place of, I do not care about myself. So my reputation, it does not matter. Yeah. I do not matter. Therefore I can be incendiary and any surface level attention is good attention. And again, I won't make any excuses for that. I said what I said. I did what I did. And moving forward, all I can really do now is try to use my platform to make right and to be just to be a positive like change in the world.
You also come from a generation where your whole life, every up and down of it is documented online. You, a very online person,
extremely online.
You were, as far as I recall from our previous conversations, you were sort of not allowed to use technology and interact with media when you were very young. I remember you telling me about discovering a Florence and the Machine song for the first time in the credits of like a Snow White movie or something.
Yes.
Is that right? And that was sort of your breakthrough. You became a participant in fan culture online, sort of surreptitiously away from your parents, and your religious upbringing. And then you dove in really deep. And I think something that people love about you is that there's this huge archive of Hayden and Ethel Cain content. You're an extremely prolific Tumblr user. Shout out to Tumblr.
Joe's favorite website.
My favorite, the greatest social network to ever exist, I would say. You had a very colorful, very blunt Twitter, even up through becoming known. You had a huge YouTube archive, a lot of which you've since, especially in the midst of all of this, like taken down. Like, I want to talk about the flip side of your statement recently, which was standing up and saying, I'm also being attacked. I'm a trans artist. It's a crazy time in the fight for equal rights for trans people. Do you regret, or do you now feel differently about having put so much of yourself out there now that you can see how it can be flipped or turned or weaponized? And are you withdrawing basically because of that?
The short answer is yes. I have had to what you said, when I discovered and started sneaking onto the internet at all costs at about 15, I took it and ran with it. It was kind of the escape from the life that I'd been living. And anyone who would take me, I was like, I'm here. I'll do what I have to do to be here. And that culture on the internet at the time was so bad and so crazy because it was a bunch of like
feral teens.
Teens who were like just not so bonkers. And then I became
edgelordism.
Literally, I mean, that's
yourself included, myself included.
I remember being on Stan Twitter before Stan Twitter was called that. I remember whenever people were first starting to refer to it because of, I guess, the Eminem song or whatever. Like, I remember witnessing the birth of Stan Twitter and being on the front lines of being the worst person you know.
Fighting for, who were you standing?
Yeah, who were you standing?
Well, so I was not as bad, I will say that. I was, because being part of the Florence and the Machine fandom.
Right. That's a pretty gentle one.
Yeah, relatively speaking.
It's just like, we love her music, you know. I still love her music to this day. Love her.
Shout out to all our friends in various toxic stands.
Yes, but it was
who let us know how they feel about us.
Oh yeah, and it's still going strong to this day. It's honestly become like an entire subculture that is frightening and evil.
Has a lot of echoes in sports and politics and
it's
all
everywhere.
Across culture.
It's everywhere.
The world is Stan Twitter right now.
It has fully become that. But I remember being on there and just, you know, it was kind of a way to, at the time, you know, when I had no followers, no friends, nobody was looking at me. So I was able to just like take all this weird negativity that I'd built up in retaliation that I could never spew out at the people in my life who maybe actually deserved it. I was able to just be like, blah, at everything on the internet. And now, as a 27-year-old who knows a lot better and is a lot smarter and, you know, both knows better than to say those things and also knows better than to put all of my business on the internet, looks back like, oh my God, when my mom was telling me that the internet is forever, she was right. It is. It's so embarrassing. Like,
wow.
Like,
shout out, Mom.
I can genuinely, like, it's like the film Assassination Nation.
Can you imagine if any of this got out?
It's like, imagine having your entire life and all your nastiest moments splayed out for everybody to see. It's like, who wouldn't crumble in that moment? Again, not to like play woe is me, but to the other half of the statement, it's like, you know, with my identity in this political time in America, you know, it is, people are not going to like you. People are naturally going to see a trans woman who is, you know, becoming, and this is specifically, again, speaking on the second half of the statement, not to conflate it with the first half of the statement, but the second half of the statement was also, I don't even want to say it out loud, but being accused of the things I was being accused of that
glorifying
were so
incest and bestiality, like some very extreme
child
abuse, being a proponent.
Yes, all of those very, very vicious things, which are also, you know, it's the same thing as with the queer community has often been attacked as sexual deviants and, you know, perverts and whatnot. It is a huge thing. So getting that, I also really did feel like it would be completely remiss to not be like, you cannot, you know, do this without me acknowledging that this is, because it's not just about me in that regard. It's like queer people are to this day attacked with all kinds of slanderous materials because, you know, I think one of the biggest ways that people are turned against the queer community is protect the children, protect this, protect that. It is, you go for those low blows to be like, oh, well, you're abusing a child. You must be the scum of the earth. It's an easy way to turn the conversation. And, you know, the things that were used as evidence to, you know, or whatever they were calling it, it's so blatantly just attacking based off of an identity, which is so frustrating to see. I've witnessed it happen to people before me. I will not be the last person it happens to. And so I did feel like, as much as I didn't want to be like, oh, well, I'm this, I'm that. It's like, I wanted to point out, this is the world that we live in. This happens to queer people often. Any queer person who is at least somewhat favorable or could be someone that the world looks at and goes, oh, hey, maybe we were wrong. It's like, we can't have that. You need to be taken down because it doesn't fit a narrative about the community. And so I think that it happens often. And I wanted to point that out.
Do you believe it to have been a targeted attack in that way?
Knowing what I know about the people who did propagate it, I do believe that very specific segment of everything that was happening, those specific allegations were being weaponized by a certain group to attack me for my identity. I'm not going to sit here and like lay out every single detail for you, but it was, that very specific thing, I knew I'd seen it before in places that didn't garner as much attention. And whenever these other certain things happened and got, a kind of a big gust of air in that fire, they said, well, let's put this on top of it. And so
then it all became conflated.
And that's why I said it's a very
layered,
weird situation that happened. And that's why the statement was so... I tried to be as concise as possible because I know a lot of people on the internet also don't like to read. So I was worried. I was like, how do I cram all of this?
Yeah, you didn't do a forward-facing video
and not a notes app.
Well, I said,
you didn't speak it. You wrote it.
I said, how do I put this something where it's like as clear and blatant and bulleted as possible, so it's not misconstrued? I was like, I really just want to be as concise as possible, and like I probably could have elaborated more on certain things, but like literally, when I posted it, I already saw comments asking Grok on Twitter to summarize it. It was like, people do not want to read it. And I got scared that if I make it any longer, people are going to run with it. Like, I was very conflicted on what the best way to put this out was. And so I just said, let me hit everything hard and fast and try to just be as honest and upfront and to the point as possible. I don't know. It's a lot of things at once. And so I said, let's try to address this concisely, to the point, be direct, and then just chill for a second, because, getting too emotional, you're just going to make a mess of it further. And I don't know.
Was there the anxiety, which I'm sure was quite intense, as it's all kind
horrible.
of like, right. Is part of that anxiety not simply personal about like, oh no, I do have to reckon with this thing that I did, but also I have to reckon with things that are being aspersions that are being cast upon me. It's not just that, but it's also I'm not the 19-year-old who posted edgelord tweets. I'm a musician with fans and a successful life that's heading in a beautiful direction. Is part of the anxiety like, could this undermine that? Could this kneecap that and
not
take
even
it
so
over?
much. Like, to me, I was thinking, because, for me, my career is a blessing to me. As long as I get to do this job, it is a blessing. I'm very grateful to have, I don't come from this world. This was not mine. I never thought this would happen. So every day I get to do this job, I'm grateful. It is a blessing that I count. And if I ever lose it, especially by the consequences of my own actions, that would be my fault. So that to me wasn't a worry. It was... For me, the anxiety was like, as a deeply neurotic person who has both been a horrible person at times, but is also very concerned with my character and doing the right thing. How those two things are concurrent, I don't actually know. But being like, I have made mistakes and I'm now being held accountable and facing the consequences of those mistakes. Some aspects of those consequences are justified, being held accountable for the things I have said. However those were brought to light, I did say those things. I have to be honest about that. But on the flip side, being accused of things that are blown out of proportion and all these things happening at the same time, the anxiety was just kind of, am I the worst person ever? Like, but like really believing that for a moment of, oh my God, I like to tell myself that I think I do the right thing. I try to be good to people. I try to be kind. I like try to stand by these values that I was raised with, and then thinking, am I completely not doing that at all? Have I actually been the biggest piece of shit for my whole life? And it was kind of a crisis of identity of like, I'm the biggest hypocrite ever. I'm just all these things. And so I wasn't so much worried about my career as I was just my character of like, oh my God, like I like to think that despite my flaws and despite the things I've done that do hold a lot of gravity, am I still that person? Am I still horrible? I do have a very kind of reactionary, inflammatory side to me that's like, where I get my EP names from at first. And then it's like, I've always kind of described myself as being a little badass 8-year-old boy who has been sent to live with grandma, and I'm simultaneously grandma. So I'm like, part of me is like, I feel like this very reactionary child who acts before I think, who acts out. But then I also like to think of myself as, when the fire has subsided, I think this is the right thing to do. This is what needs to be done. This is how you can make right, be apologetic, atone, be accountable, don't let the sun go down on your anger, like all these values of lashing out and then realizing, here's what we need to do to clean up this mess. And I try to be like an all-encompassing whatnot of like, if I'm going to be like that,
I also have to be like
this.
Yeah, right.
And sometimes I get scared of like, who's in the driver's seat? I don't know. And so that is like a crisis of identity that I do have. And especially when things like this happen and all of my mistakes are splayed out for everybody to see and everybody has an opinion of it, which everybody gets an opinion. That is my job.
Sure.
I do have to kind of sit there and wonder like, who's right? Who, like, what is the all omnipotent, correct opinion on me? And then I have to try to decipher and then figure out how to move forward beyond that. So it's like,
it's complicated.
It's a lot of hoops to jump through.
Yeah. It's also, it was especially jarring, I think, for me, because you have been also extremely outspoken politically for an artist of your stature.
Yeah.
You've said some controversial things about our previous president, Joe Biden, and his treatment of the war in Gaza. And, you're not a lot of artists have gone out on the limb to even comment on
the words,
those sorts of situations at all. And you've been, let's say, unfiltered in a lot of your beliefs. In a way that I think you feel is the right thing to do, to be morally upright and to be outspoken. Like, do you think this experience will mute your activist impulses?
No. And that's not just, kind of a selfish plot to kind of make myself feel better for the things that I've done in my past. But I also, like, at the end of the day, it's like, despite wherever it comes from, the reactionary child, the offensive nature, the whatever I've done in, my life, despite that, grandma does come along at the end of the day and says, you have to be a good person. Like, you really do have to stand up for what's right at the end of the day. So it's like, all that aside, it's like, whoever I am as a person, it's like, that is still baseline the right thing to do. It's like, if you are going to have a platform and you are going to be, and also if I'm going to write art about things that are heavy and intensive and, controversial and deals with heavy subjects, why wouldn't I talk about that? And I see comments often that I think are so strange when people say, you're an artist, you should stick to singing. Why would you be political? But it's like, art is the most political thing in the world. It's like, you can't take what I say when I sing it, but then reject what I say when I speak it. It's like, this is the way that I see the world. And it's like, my own shortcomings aside and, things that I've done, it's like, this is still the right thing to do at the end of the day. You always have to speak out for people who are